Welcome in, everyone. This is Casey, and to my
And
left,
Jacob.
Jacob. He's back. The not so new
Yes, I
addition
am.
to Chatterbox Sports. It's glad to have you back, Jacob. How are you feeling?
Happy to be here. Happy to be here. Happy to be back with Chatterbox. Happy to be back with Cincinnati. And happy to have some Bengals to talk about. I feel like with the draft behind us, we've been beating a dead horse talking about draft picks for the last couple weeks. So happy to have an actual schedule in front of us.
Absolutely. The schedule released 8 p.m. There was a lot of leaks leading up to that. Some true, some false leaks. Your initial thoughts on this 2024-2025 NFL schedule for the Bengals?
I like it. I really like how obviously we knew who the Bengals would be playing for some time now, but I like the way it shook out. Casey's going to go over the games here in a second, but it starts off on the lighter side. There doesn't seem to be a real daunting back to back of two terribly really good top end teams. The juggernauts that we play this year are spaced out a little bit. The one 3 game stretch in 10 days is the first thing that caught my eye. Week 14 to 16. That's certainly going to be a brutal one with the Titans sandwiched between two primetime games there. But I really like the way the Bengals schedule shook out here.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. The initial thoughts, I didn't see anything that jumped out to me that I thought was super egregious. I know a lot of people had complaints about the 10 days, 3 games built in our schedule, but there's actually a lot of teams dealing with the exact same thing. It's more of an NFL issue, not just a Bengals issue. So, that being said, let's jump into the schedule. Week 1, we play the Patriots at 1 p.m. at home. That should be an easier game, I think, on the schedule, an easy home debut game. Leading after that, week 2, we have the Chiefs. We already knew about this one at 4:30. Early on for sure. Commanders week 3, Monday night game. That should be an interesting game. That's probably going to be one of the whiteout or striped out games. We'll see how that ends up playing out. Week 4, we go to Carolina to the Panthers at 1 p.m. We then travel back home to Baltimore to play against Baltimore, excuse me. Week 6, we play the Giants on Sunday Night Football. That's an interesting opponent for a Sunday night game for the Bengals. And then week 7, we played the Browns in our second AFC North divisional game. Following that, we have the Eagles at 4:30 at home. So that's a solid start time for the Bengals, I think, there at 4:30 at home. Week 9, Raiders, 1 p.m. game. Week 10, Thursday Night Football versus the Ravens. That's tough at Baltimore. Going to have to do the revenge rematch game for Joe Burrow. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Week 11, we play the Chargers in LA at SoFi Stadium. A little bit of a rivalry between Herbert and Joe Burrow. Week 12, bye week. I think that's a solid bye week. We then, after the bye week, play the Pittsburgh Steelers December 1st at 1 p.m. at home. I like the sounds of that. We go to Jerry World, week 14 for Monday Night Football, December 9th. Then we go to Tennessee, December 15th at 1 p.m. Round out that 10-day stretch at Cincinnati against Cleveland on a Thursday Night Football game. And then to finish the season, week 17, we have the Denver Broncos on December 28th or the 29th, and the Pittsburgh Steelers January 4th or January 5th. That's when they start throwing in those Saturday games, and so that's why they haven't had the official times out for those yet, because it's not locked in yet. So that is the Bengals 2024-2025 schedule. Jacob, we already mentioned it before, the 10-day stretch with 3 games in between those 10 days. Dallas, Titans, Browns. That's a brutal stretch. Tough, physical opponents. I know the Titans don't have Derrick Henry anymore, but I still think that defense is going to hit you in the mouth. Dallas, they certainly get after the quarterback. We already know how we fare against the Browns. I think that's probably our toughest part of the schedule. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree. Not only is it 3 games in 10 days, like we've said, but the Cowboys are going to be, if they don't win the division, they'll be the top wild card team, presumably in the NFC. they're going to be a playoff team. The Browns certainly on the cusp of being a playoff team again this year. And then the Titans with a young quarterback in Will Levis, but our old friends Tyler Boyd and Brian Callahan down there, they might turn it around on the offensive side of the ball and be a little bit more exciting this year. And we know how their defense fared against the Bengals offense last year when the team could barely score any points in Nashville. So I'm really, really worried about that stretch for the Bengals, but I do like that it comes after the bye. You said when you were reading through the games that Week 12 bye, how much you liked where that fell, and I couldn't agree more. Week 12 seems to be the sweet spot there, especially with 6 games to end the season that are in a tight stretch and against pretty competitive teams. The Steelers twice, depending on who their quarterback is and what the play from that position looks like, are probably going to be in the mix for the playoffs. We already talked about the Browns and the Cowboys. The Broncos will be a nice little break in there, hopefully, depending on how Bo Nix plays this season. But yeah, that last 6 game stretch is going to be huge for the Bengals after the bye with those 3 games in 10 days right there in the middle.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I also didn't think about this being Tyler Boyd's revenge game, I guess. It's not really revenge if you walk out the place with no issues, but it is somewhat of a prove it that you still got it sort of game for Tyler Boyd possibly. And then, of course, Brian Callahan knows our offense, knows our scheme, knows the players here in the building. So that could be an interesting game. I'm not going to overlook
Important
that
to
game.
remember, they have Tony Pollard and DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley as well. So a lot of weapons on that offense, even though Derrick Henry has gone elsewhere. So I wouldn't be so quick to expect that as an easy win, especially in that close stretch of games.
Yeah, and I think the biggest takeaway, because of the difficulty of our schedule in the mid and later part of our schedule, you have to start quick. The first 6 weeks, you play teams that were in the top 6 in the NFL draft, picking the top 6 in the NFL draft with the Patriots, the Commanders, Panthers would have picked in number 1 overall, and the Giants. All of them picked in the top 6 this year. And all those teams, to me, they're still in the rebuild phase. I'm sure maybe the Commanders are probably the closest team that you might look at and say that they have a threat possibly there, finally getting the quarterback position answered or think that they have the answer there. For me, they got to start quick. They got to start hot. You got to win these games. You got to start positive. You can't slip. You can't go 1-3. You can't go 2-2. You got to start 3-1, 4-2 in that range, so then you have a chance later on down in your back part of your schedule.
Yeah, exactly like you said. Patriots, Commanders, Panthers, all 3 of those teams have a new coach, and 2 of those teams have a rookie quarterback. And we all know how Bryce Young fared last year in his rookie season. The Panthers were picking number 1 overall 2 years in a row. So they're certainly a long ways away as well. In those first 6 weeks, including the Ravens and the Giants games, I think the absolute floor for the Bengals that we can, withstand is 3-3. I would love to be 4-2. I would love to be 5-1. 6-0 would be amazing. But I think 3-3 is the absolute floor for those 6 games to be able to bounce back against the much better teams we face in the later half of the season. I think a loss to either the Commanders or the Giants could be in play. I love Lou Anarumo's defense against rookie quarterbacks. I think he does a really good job. I think the Patriots and Commanders games should be wins, but 2 years ago, Daniel Jones led this Giants team to the playoffs and beat the Vikings in the first round. Obviously, he was injured last year and didn't look very good. But I'd be a little weary to cast off that Giants game just because they were picking 6th overall this year. Malik Neighbors is a special player on the outside. Daniel Jones, if he can find that level that got them to be a playoff team that even advanced to the second round, they could be a little bit of a dangerous team there in prime time in MetLife.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that either. I think that you're spot on with that. They have not had a weapon probably since OBJ. So I think that's fair enough to say that could revitalize their offense, and defense is still pretty much intact there in New York. So that's not a game you can look over. The one thing that I will say that many of the fans have been complaining about is the 2 Thursday night football games. Yes, we've complained about the 10 days and 3 game stretch. A lot of teams have that in the NFL this year. And I think it's usually 11 days. So I'm not going to complain about another day. It just seems kind of fruitless because that's just the direction the NFL is going. But the two Thursday night football games being AFC North games, that to me is also pretty tough. But there's a huge but in between this. If you look at the schedule, when those occur, so you're playing the Raiders at home. I don't think that that's going to be a too tough of a game. Like, you're not being physically beaten, right? Like you are if you are playing against the Ravens or the Browns or the Steelers. Those are more physically demanding games. So you play Baltimore. Baltimore doesn't have a break in between that, so they're facing the exact same thing. Early game of the week for them, 4 days to prepare. So there's no disadvantage really for either side. It sucks for health reasons, but then you get a 10-day break. You play the Chargers bye week. So from there, you've had 10 days to rest. You play a game, a bye week, and then they don't play a game until December 1st. So from November 17th to December 1st, they are not playing any football in between that time period. I think that's actually really, really good considering what they have to go up against with that 10-day stretch of 3 games. And then after that Thursday night football game against Cleveland, they have another 10 days to rest to finish out the season. So it's almost like they get 2 mini bye weeks and then their actual bye week thrown in there, which is like a mega bye week. I don't know. I like it. I like the way that it's set up. If you're going to have tough stretches like that, I'd rather have some breaks in between to where they can rest up. And considering how this is all towards the back part of their schedule, you're getting the mini week after week 10. You're getting a long bye week in week 11 through 13. So you're getting, 14 days off. And then you're getting the 10 days off between week 16 and 17. I like that a lot for our chances. If we have any injuries, I think that's going to be the best way that you're wanting to build your schedule around.
Absolutely. That stretch of 6 games at the end of the year is going to make or break playoff hopes, seeding hopes, all that stuff. It always does, regardless of the opponents. That end of the season stretch is where you make your money for the rest of for the postseason and beyond. So to have that window to be able to get healthy, get guys back to, maybe not 100%, but get much, much closer going into that final stretch and really finish strong is going to be huge for the Bengals. And like Casey said, those mini buys are not something you can look over. Having a Thursday night football game is definitely not ideal, but having a Thursday night football game before you take a cross country trip to play the Chargers, who obviously weren't too great last year, but we know what Justin Herbert can do on the field. He can light it up at any time. So having the extra time to prepare for that team before you travel across the country to play the Chargers is huge for the Bengals. I think that's going to be great, especially like you said, with how the Ravens beat you up in a game physically. That's going to be really important for the Bengals to bounce back before probably another hard-nosed game in the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, their coach out there now, you know how he likes to play. You know he likes to get physical. They took Joe Alt at 5th when they have basically no good receivers on that roster, and then they added Lad McConkey in the second. But they're going to play a physical brand of football as well. So those are 2 really, really tough games right before the bye, which is why I really, really like that bye placement.
The other thing, too, that just came to my mind, having the Steelers late in the season allows us to have enough film on their new offense and how that's going to look with Russell Wilson at quarterback, because I am a little weary of what that looks like. I think they have enough pieces there to have a good offense. It's always just been quarterback play to me. And Russell Wilson, whether or not you think he's got it or doesn't have it, he's proven to have had it at one point. So that also helps us out, just knowing what has happened throughout the season up to that point. We don't play them until week 13. The only other thing that I can really think of that I just sticks out to me is like what you said. It feels like the tough games are spread out. Like week 2 versus the Chiefs, week 5 against the Ravens, week 7 against the Browns, and then you have to play the Eagles right after that. But that's really the only game that's like back-to-back tough, right? Then you play week 10 is the Ravens. We already talked about the mini bye week for the Chargers, bye week, then Pittsburgh. And then you have not a mini bye week, but you have 8 days to prepare for the Cowboys. Like, that can't be understated enough. And then you're playing a team that's still trying to rebuild in the Titans, and you go play the Browns. It's so on and so forth. Like the Broncos, right after the Steelers, or right before the Steelers, like that. Those are all very well placed, in my opinion, games where the tough games are kind of, slotted in right beside the bad games.
Yeah, the tough thing about that Dallas game, the Bengals have not fared well in Jerry's world. 0-5 their last five trips down to Dallas. Obviously, a much different roster construction the last time we went down there. So hopefully a different result this go around. But stat in the other direction, the Bengals are 7-0 in their last seven home primetime games. So that Commanders Monday night game and that Browns Thursday night game, if I had to guess, you're whiting out the Thursday night game against the Browns and then trying to do the stripes again for Monday night against the Commanders. I think both will be absolutely electric games. I'm really excited for both, and I have the Bengals taking both as wins.
Well, that'll do it from me and Jacob. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section. What are you looking forward to? What games are you going to? Do you have any complaints about the schedule? Let us know. Drop a like, drop a sub, all that fun stuff. We'll catch you guys in the next video.